Hello, you're watching PC Jack. The RX 580 released back in 2017, and while it's been surpassed by newer, better performing and power efficient cards, it still remains one of the most popular used GPUs on the market 7 years later. If you're looking to build a low budget 1080p gaming PC, then you'll see the RX 580 recommended fairly often, especially since it's still receiving driver support to this day. Now, today's video actually started out a little differently, as originally we were going to be taking a look at the 4GB model of the RX 580, which, while still a nice budget option, is not quite regarded as highly compared to its 8GB model. However, when I bought this card a while back off eBay, I initially believed I had bought a 4GB version, but only several months later when I actually got around to testing it, I noticed I was actually sent the 8GB model. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but thank you to the unaware eBay seller who sent me this. You're the best. So instead of testing the 4GB version, today we'll be testing the 8GB model in a couple of titles at 1080p to see what sort of performance you can expect from this card in 2024. While you'll find this card is still pretty capable in many titles, there are some exceptions as you'll see towards the end of the video. We'll be testing this in my ITX rig, which as you can see is a little tight for airflow on the RX 580, however, you'll find it doesn't fare too badly in regards to temperatures. So to start, taking a look at our first game Stray, we're running this on max settings with no changes to our resolution scaling, and as you can see it's a great experience even on this older GPU. We're sitting pretty comfortably with an average FPS in the 70s and decent 1 and 0.1% lows, showing a really smooth experience for this title. Quickly taking a look at temperatures and power draw, our GPU was hitting a max of 76C, however during all of my testing I did see it peak at 78C, but that's still absolutely fine given we're running this in a compact system. In regards to power draw, our peak power draw is hitting around 170 watts, however from previous experience, depending on the card you have, you may have a decent experience with some undervolting to lower this and still maintain decent performance. Worth considering, but even at stock this is already a good result in our first title. So let's move on to our second game. Moving on to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, we're running this maxed out with the exception of RT as the RX 580 does not support this. However, even without this, the game still looks great. I actually published a dedicated video comparing RT on and off in this tile, so if you're interested then feel free to check out my video. Anyway, running this tile at 1080p, we're getting a great average frame rate well over 100 FPS, with no noticeable frame drops even during more intense sequences. Moving on to Doom Eternal, we're running this at ultra nightmare settings, again with the exception of no RT as this is not supported. And while this game still runs great on this card, we are starting to see slightly more noticeable frame drops with a lot going on the screen, which is reflected in our 0.1% lows. However, this still plays really well and our average FPS reflects this, but given the scalability of this title, I would definitely recommend tweaking settings further to better optimize for this GPU, especially given the fast-paced level of gameplay which greatly benefits a higher frame rate. Next up, we have Death Stranding. Now, it's worth noting that this is the director's cut and not the original PS4 port, which actually performs better than the version we're running today. There are some extra features in the director's cut, most notably in-game content, but also full PlayStation DualSense support. But if you're not interested in these, then opting for the original version could be worthwhile, especially for that increased performance. Regardless, the director's cut still runs really well on the RX 580 and maintains an average frame rate over 60 FPS, which as an unofficial goal for all our titles is a great result. Things do start to dip a little when more things are going on like with this fight with enemies, but we still keep things over 60 FPS. But again, like Doom Eternal, this could be mitigated by lowering our settings a touch. Now before we close out this video, it would be wise for us to test a much more demanding title which may better reflect the shortcomings of this card in 2024, and a suitable choice for this I found was Starfield. Now, this game is intensive on even many newer cards, however I wanted to showcase something where there is a lot more compromise when it comes to the RX 580. Being optimistic, opting for all high settings with no resolution scaling enabled, as you can see we're having a bit of a tough time even hitting 30 FPS. Dropping this down to medium, we do start hitting 30 FPS, and while many won't be satisfied with not hitting 60 FPS, if you're an Xbox gamer you may find this experience somewhat similar and subjectively playable given Starfield running at 30 FPS on console prior to its big June update, which introduced quality and performance options for variable frame rates. So depending on your preference you may find this acceptable, but given we're on PC, we want to see how close we can get to a higher frame rate. Again, dropping our settings down to low, we start to get closer to 40 FPS, which is nice, but at this point I feel we really start to compromise with pretty poor visuals, which aren't quite as crisp as when we were running at even medium. Of course, all of this can be mitigated with a more comprehensive tweaking of all settings for optimal performance and visual fidelity, but more importantly, playing with our resolution scaling with FSR as well as frame generation. But ultimately, you will still find the Starfield will be a pretty demanding title for a GPU like the RX 580. So overall, while the RX 580 can perform very well in many titles, when it comes to newer titles you definitely will have to temper expectations. However, I am still pleasantly surprised by how well this card still runs, and if I was looking to build a low budget 1080p gaming PC, with used RX 580s usually going for less than £100 on eBay, I definitely recommend giving them some consideration during your search. But let me know your thoughts on the RX 580 down in the comments below. Are you thinking of buying one in 2024, or do you still have one in your system? If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PCJack94. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.